Yo, what's up everybody? It's D from the Pickup Show. First video in a long time, so be easy on your boy. In this video, we are going to talk about the worst franchise in the 2000s. No, not from 2000 to 2009. I'm talking about 2000 to present day. So from the 2000-2001 season to the 2017-2018 season. So, how do I determine which franchise is the worst franchise in the 2000s? Well, whoever has the least amount of wins from 2000-2001 season to now will be considered the worst franchise in the league. So when I first thought about this topic, I for sure thought the worst franchise was Sacramento Kings. But I forgot how good they were in the early 2000s. I mean, those Kings-Laker playoff series were intense. So it wasn't them. Then I thought, oh, Philadelphia 76ers. Gotta be it. They legit tanked for 3 or 4 years. Turns out it wasn't them. They had Allen Iverson for a few years, and even after AI, they still were decent. So it wasn't those two franchises. In fact, they didn't even crack the top 5 worst franchise list. So who is the worst franchise in the 2000s? It's the New York Knicks. The Knicks were a powerhouse in the 90s. They had a star in Patrick Ewing, John Starks, and the Mason brothers, and a young core. The team made the playoffs every single season in the 90s, which included 2 trips to the finals and 4 trips to the conference finals. If it wasn't for Michael Jordan, the Knicks might have won a ring in the 90s. The Knicks, like every dynasty, just fell. James Dolan took charge of the Knicks and traded away Patrick Ewing. People believe this was the start of the end. In this 4-team deal, the Knicks traded Patrick Ewing to the Supersonics and a first-round pick to the Phoenix Suns for Luke Longley, Travis Knight, Glenn Rice, and a 2001 first-round pick, which ended up, I believe this pick ended up being Jamal Tinsley. And then Lazaro Borrell, Vernon Maxwell, Vladimir Stepania, and a 2001 second-round draft pick. Michael Wright, which was selected, and a 2002 first-round pick, which was Kareem Rush, to the New York Knicks. Very, very, very interesting trade. But we got to remember that Patrick Ewing was also demanding for a trade, so the Knicks had to do what they got to do. But despite all that, the 2000-2001 season, the Knicks actually did pretty good. They were 4th in the East, and the first-round matchup was against the Toronto Raptors. Unfortunately, the Knicks lost that, and the Toronto Raptors moved on. So let's go to the 2001-2002 season. The 2001-2002 season was definitely a loss for the New York Knicks. Larry Johnson retired during training camp, and after a 10-9 start, Jeff Van Gundy just suddenly quit. Their starting center Marcus Camby only played 29 games due to injury, which is the reason why the Knicks struggled, only winning 30 games and finishing 13th in the Eastern Conference. After the season, the Knicks decided to trade their starting center Marcus Camby, Mark Jackson, and the 7th pick in the 2002 NBA draft, which happened to be Nene, for All-Star Antonio McDyess, the 25th pick, which happened to be Frank Williams, and a second-round pick in 2003, which ended up being Masij Lampe, which I don't know who that is, but obviously he didn't do anything for the Knicks. So starting off the 2002-2003 season, after missing the playoffs for the first time in 15 years, the Knicks were hoping for a bounce-back year. Unfortunately, that did not happen. You remember how they traded for All-Star Antonio McDyess? Yeah, that guy missed the whole season with the patellar tendon rupture. And because of McDyess, the Knicks missed the playoffs for the second year in a row. So let's just go to the 2003-2004 season. The Knicks were hoping for a great pick since this was a loaded draft class. But they ended up with the 9th pick and picked Michael Sweetney, who only played 4 seasons in the NBA. If they were looking for a big, they should have just drafted David West, but you never know with those picks, honestly. But guys they missed were, also they had the 30th pick, and they drafted Mikaj Lampe, which we already talked about, but instead of him, a lot of guys that were still there were Jason Capono, Luke Walton, Steve Blake, Zaza Pachulia, Keith Bogans, Matt Bonner, and Mo Williams, and last but not least, Kyle Korver. To make up for their lackluster draft picks, the Knicks signed Dikembe Mutombo, who was already 37 years old. The Knicks lost 7 of the first 9 games of the season, and fans were already shouting "Fire Layden," which is their general manager, Scott Layden, who is now with the Minnesota Timberwolves. But the Knicks fans got what they wanted, and Layden was fired, and Dolan brought in none other than Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah's first move came in January when he traded injury-prone Antonio McDyess, Charlie Ward, who was a 2004 first-round pick, and a 2010 first-round pick, to the Phoenix Suns for Penny Hardaway and the return of Coney Island native Stephon Marbury. Thomas was not done. He traded away Keith Van Horn in 2005's second-round pick to the Milwaukee Bucks for Tim Thomas, and later he fired coach Don Chaney for Lenny Wilkens. Even with all these changes, the Knicks still managed to get back in the playoffs as a 7th seed, where they played against the Nets, and unfortunately they got swept. But forget that. Let's go to the 2004-2005 season. In the 2004 NBA draft, the Knicks only had the 44th pick, and with that pick, they got Trevor Ariza, who now looking back at it, that was actually a really good pick, and they should have just saved him. But trying to keep last year's momentum, they traded for professional scorer Jamal Crawford, who ended up being the team's second leading scorer. This season was not the most successful. They were ranked 11th in the conference and did not make the playoffs yet again. The one positive move the Knicks did was trading Nazir Muhammad for Malik Rose in a 2005 first-round pick, who we'll talk about it right now, but ended up being David Lee. During the preseason, the Knicks acquired Quinn Richardson and Nate Robinson, and they only had to give up Kurt Thomas, which was actually a pretty good trade. In the 2005 NBA draft, we already talked about they drafted David Lee, but someone that we don't talk about is they also drafted Channing Frye, which those are two. Now look back at it, those are two really decent picks, and unfortunately, everything has to go to an end because the Knicks messed it up again, and New York is already used to this. So on October 4th, 2005, the Knicks made a big-time trade. The Knicks got Eddie Curry, Antonio Davis, and what did they give up? They gave up Tim Thomas, Michael Sweetney, and Jermaine Jackson. But that's not the biggest part of this trade. The big part of this trade is the Bulls had the rights to swap picks with the Knicks for the 2006 and 2007 season. And I'll just get it over with right now. That ended up being LaMarcus Aldridge and Joakim Noah. And they also gave up the 2007 second round pick, which happened to be Kyrylo Fesenko, and the 2009 second round pick, which ended up being John Brookman. This season's payroll was $124 million, which was $74.5 million above the salary cap. To put that into perspective, if the Knicks had this payroll today, they would have been the 10th highest payroll in the NBA. That's crazy. But this team was just terrible. They had a lot of players that can score, but none could play team basketball. And then they had guys who came off injury or just past their prime. They had guys like Jamal Crawford, Eddie Curry, Steve Franchise, Penny Hardaway, David Lee, Stephon Marbury, Nate Robinson, and Jalen Rose. 8 guys who need the ball to make a difference. In an interview years later, Channing Frye told reporters about the 2005 team, and he said, "You know what? I had guys like Antonio Davis and Malik Rose tell me, this is not what the NBA is like." Frye said, "Guys not practicing because they didn't want to. Guys just literally come to practice for an hour, and then everybody leaves and not say a word." I think you had a lot of personalities and guys who were great on individual levels. It just wasn't. They weren't a team. We weren't a team. And that is why they were last in the Eastern Conference. And because of that, that forced them to miss out on LaMarcus Aldridge. Now, let's talk about the 2006-2007 season. Knicks missed the playoffs for the 3rd straight time. Average scorers who cannot stop anyone on defense. That's all I gotta say about that. The 2007-2008 season was interesting.
Did y'all see we got Zach Randolph? Did anybody see that?
Yes, sir.
You see the move Isaiah Bulldorf?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody see what Isaiah Bulldorf for the New York Knicks?
That's right. That's right.
Anybody see what he did?
Yes, sir.
We got Zach Randolph. So now we got a beast to throw the ball down low to.
On draft day, the Knicks traded away Steve Francis, Channing Frye, and the second-round pick, who happened to be Omer Asik, for Zach Randolph, Fred Jones, and Dan Dickau. This was supposed to help the Knicks finally reach the playoffs. Did they? Well, before we get into that, let's talk about the draft as well. If the Knicks would have kept their draft pick, they would have been number 9. And number 9, Joakim Noah was selected. But because of the pick swap, they got the 23rd pick, which they got Wilson Chandler, which isn't that bad. But still, they could have got Joakim Noah when he was good, not in this contract that he's in today. But anyways, they missed the playoffs for the 4th straight time. Why? Injuries. The newly acquired Zach Randolph missed 13 games. Stephon Marbury only played 24 games. And Eddie Curry missed 22 games. When your 3 best players miss more than 10 games, you most likely won't make the playoffs. They're 14 in the Eastern Conference. Now let's go to the 2008-2009 season. First season without Stephon Marbury and Isaiah Thomas. So now Donnie Walsh is the executive. Mike D'Antoni's first year. And even though they were the second worst team in the East during the 2008 draft, they got screwed. Well, depends how you say it, but they got the 6th pick. And with that 6th pick, they selected Danilo Gallinari. He was viewed as the savior of the Knicks. The kid was a 6'10 shooter. Donnie Walsh basically wanted to trade away all the players Isaiah Thomas got. So, early on in the season, the Knicks traded professional scorer Jamal Crawford to the Warriors for another professional scorer in Al Harrington. Same person basically, but it worked out. And the Knicks traded Zach Randolph and Marty Collins to the Clippers for Cuttino Mobley and Tim Thomas. And at the trade deadline, the Knicks traded away Tim Thomas and Jerome James for Anthony Robertson for Larry Hughes. Also, Malik Rose and cash for Chris Wilcox, which that was an interesting trade. But Eddie Curry looked shitty, only playing 3 games in the season. And Danilo Gallinari only played 28 games due to injury. But to be honest, all these trades make sense to me. Just the season before, Eddie Curry was averaging 13 points while playing with the power forward in Zebo, who doesn't have an outside game. Walsh was trying to stretch the floor so Curry could have more space to work down low. But when Curry went down, it all fell into pieces. And the Knicks missed the playoffs for the 5th straight year in a row. But let's go to 2009-2010 season. And the 2009 season starts at the draft. So in the 2009 NBA draft, the Knicks had the 8th pick. And with that pick, they selected Jordan Hill. Yeah, they were one spot away from drafting Steph Curry. But why did they pick Jordan Hill? Let's just talk about that for a second. They already had Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Al Harrington, and David Lee at the 4 position. And they had Darko Milicic, Eddie Curry, Marcus Landry at the 5. So why get a big when you already got bigs? Now, I know what you're saying. They missed out on Curry and they were hoping to draft him. What guards were available? Now, that's where you're wrong, my friend. Now, you know who was picked right after Jordan Hill? It was DeMar DeRozan. And after DeMar DeRozan, it was Brandon Jennings. Which people forget how phenomenal the first few years Brandon Jennings was before his injuries. The topic of one pick away from Steph Curry gets played too much, when in reality, the topic should be why they didn't pick DeMar DeRozan, who fits into the D'Antoni system way more than Jordan Hill. But that's none of my business. But with the 29th pick, they got Tony Douglas, which wasn't bad. He was a serviceable player. But let's go into the regular season. Like the previous seasons, the Knicks were awful. What messed it up? What always messes up? Injuries, injuries, and injuries. At this point, I don't know why the Knicks didn't fire their training staff. Like, swear. Eddie Curry only played 7 games. Darko only played 8 games. Marcus Landry only played 17 games. Rookie Jordan Hill played 24 games. Nate Robinson played 30 games. And Larry Hughes played 31 games. And just to add to that, Wilson Chandler missed 17 games. The only players who played 70 games or more were David Lee and Danilo Gallinari. But at the trade deadline, the Knicks traded away Jordan Hill and Jared Jeffries, and the 16th pick in the 2012 NBA draft would happen to be Royce White for Tracy McGrady and Sergio Rodriguez. And then after, the Knicks traded Nate Robinson, Marcus Landry for Eddie House, J.R. Giddens, and Bill Walker. But even with all these trades, the Knicks were exciting to watch. They were 10th in the league in scoring and finished 11th in the East. And to Knicks fans, there was some light at the end of the tunnel. So let's talk about the offseason. The Knicks traded away David Lee to the Golden State for Ronny Turiaf, Keleno Azubuike, and Anthony Randolph. Just to know, this trade was meant for to create cap space, because during this time, Dwayne Wade, LeBron, and Chris Bosh were free agents. So the Knicks were really trying to pull for either one or two of them, so they did anything they could. But, you know what happened with them. They went to Miami. So let's talk about the 2010-2011 season. We're going to start off with the 2010 NBA draft. Now, history lesson. Remember in the 2003-2004 season when Isaiah Thomas traded Antonio McDyess and a few picks for Stephon Marbury? Well, here's that pick. That pick is now the 9th pick. And Phoenix actually traded it to Utah. And who was chosen with that pick? Gordon Hayward. Imagine Gordon Hayward playing with a young group of the Knicks, like Wilson Chandler and Danilo Gallinari. That would have been really interesting to watch, especially in the Mike D'Antoni system. But, I mean, it is what it is. So instead of Gordon Hayward, they got Andy Roddins with the 38th pick and Landry Fields with the 39th pick. Fields actually had a decent time with the Knicks. During the season, with the offseason acquisition of Amari Stoudemire, so they didn't mess up. The Knicks were looking great, actually. They were hitting in all cylinders and looked destined to make the playoffs. Then, something big happened.
Reporting that the deal is finally done. The Carmelo Anthony trade saga is finally over. Anthony going to his desired destination, Madison Square Garden, to play with the Knicks. This is a very detail-oriented trade, so we're going to show you all the components so you can get an idea of why this took so long. The Knicks get Anthony, point guard Chauncey Billups, Sheldon Williams, Anthony Carter, and former Knick. Now going back to the Knicks, Ronaldo Balkman. The Denver Nuggets will get Danilo Gallinari, Raymond Felton, Wilson Chandler, 3 starters. Timofey Mozgov also has been starting lately for the Knicks. So 4 Knicks starters, a first-round pick coming from the Warriors, 2 second-round picks, and $3 million in cash. Our J.A. Donde has tweeted, this is a great deal for the Denver Nuggets.
At the trade deadline, the Knicks traded away Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Raymond Felton, Timofey Mozgov, a 2012 second-round pick, which happened to be Quincy Miller, 2013 second-round pick, which happened to be Arslan Kuzmage, a 2014 first-round pick, who ended up being Dario Saric, and swap rights for the 2016 draft pick, which happened to be Jamal Murray, for Carmelo, Chauncey Billups, Ronaldo Balkman, Anthony Carter, Sheldon Williams, and Corey Brewer. You guys know just from the last 2 names that the Knicks messed up on their future, but during this time they were just trying to win and be relevant, and they thought Carmelo Anthony was the savior. Yeah. But the Knicks made the playoffs, but they got swept again against the Celtics. So let's go to the 2011-2012 season. During this offseason, the Knicks acquired J.R. Smith, which ended up helping the Knicks big time. And they also signed a guy by the name of Jeremy Lin. So let's talk about the 2011 NBA draft. With the Knicks, they drafted Iman Shumpert, who also wasn't a bad pickup. That was really good. During the regular season, due to the lockout, the season only had 66 games and did not start until Christmas Day. The season did not start off the best. The Knicks only won 8 games and lost 13 in the first 21. With an injured Carmelo, Mike D'Antoni had to do something different. So he decided to give Jeremy Lin a chance. And that was the beginning of Linsanity. During Linsanity, Lin averaged 27.3 points, 8.3 assists, and 2 steals in his first 4 starts. Lin closed February 14 game against the Toronto Raptors with a game-winning three-pointer with 0.5 seconds left on the clock. But like every good thing must come to an end. The person that gave Lin a chance was fired, and who replaced Mike D'Antoni was Mike Woodson. Carmelo came back, and the Knicks were 2-6, which wasn't good. On March 31st, Lin tore his meniscus, which ended an era of Linsanity. But supposedly Carmelo and a few other teammates really did not like the Linsanity era. I don't get why, but it is what it is. It just shows what kind of people they are. But 2011 playoffs. The Knicks made the playoffs and faced the Miami Heat. They got their first playoff win since 2001. But they still lost to the Big Three 4-1. 2012-2013 season. Off-season. The Knicks started the off-season with a bang. The Knicks got center Marcus Camby and gave up Tony Douglas, Jerome Jordan, Josh Harrelson, a 2014 second rounder, and a 2015 second rounder. Now, this is something that they did before. Dikembe Mutombo, they gave up 2 second round picks, I believe, and he was 37. Marcus Camby's 38, and they gave up another 2 second round picks. Knicks. But the Knicks acquired in another trade. The Knicks acquired Raymond Felton and Kurt Thomas in exchange for Jared Jeffries, Dan Gajurzik, and the rights to Kostas Papankoloa, and a 2016 second round pick and cash consideration. So that's a total of 3 second round picks. But signings, they signed Jason Kidd, Kenyon Martin, Quinn Richardson, which is a re-sign, Chris Copeland, and Pablo Prigioni. All these moves were definitely win-now moves. And in the season, the Knicks clinched the Atlantic Division with a 54-28 record. That was the first time they clinched a division since the 93-94 season. And they finally got out of the first round playoffs, but lost to Indiana in the second round 4-2. 2013-2014 season. This was the start of the Phil Jackson era. And his first move, traded Marcus Camby and Steve Novak and Quinn Richardson and a 2014 second round pick, a 2016 first round pick, and a 2017 second round pick for Andre Bargnani. Yeah, that didn't start off well. Jason Kidd retired during the season. The Knicks yet again injury prone. Raymond Felton played 65 games. Tyson Chandler played 55. Andre Bargnani missed half the season. Amari Stoudemire played 65 games. Kenyon Martin played 32 games. Even with all these injuries, the Knicks just missed the playoffs. Now the Knicks will finally get a lottery pick since they didn't make the playoffs, right? Wrong. They didn't. And I believe that pick was Dario Saric. But it is what it is. So the offseason, they got 2 second round picks in the 2014 NBA draft. They got Giannis' brother, Thanasis Antetokounmpo, and they got Clean Anthony early, which didn't end up working. Let's just say that. And yet again, the Knicks were terrible. Another injury-prone season. Carmelo Anthony played 40 games. Andre Bargnani played 29 games. Iman Shumpert played 24 games. J.R. Smith played 24 games. Just all bad. And it just goes to the point where, did they fire their training staff? Because obviously something's wrong. They've had so many seasons like this. But that's none of my business. Let's go to the 2015-2016 season, and let's start with the NBA draft. They finally have a lottery pick. The Knicks wanted the first pick, but ended up with the 4th pick. But it didn't matter because they picked Kristaps Porzingis, who was actually booed. Typical Knicks fans, they don't know what they're talking about, but I bet they're all happy now. Also that day, they traded away Tim Hardaway Jr. basically for Jerry Grant, which didn't make sense. But there was a rumor that came out that supposedly Fisher was dating Tim Hardaway Jr.'s girlfriend. So Phil Jackson chose to keep Derek Fisher and decided to trade away Tim Hardaway Jr., who we all know later they paid $70 million to sign. I know, dumb. And during the offseason, the Knicks signed guys that were gritty. They signed Aaron Aflalo, Robin Lopez, Kyle Quinn, Sasha Vujacic, not only Sasha Vujacic, Derek Williams, and Kevin Seraphin. And just typical Knicks, they finished 13th in the East. 2016-2017 season, Jeff Hornacek's first year. The NBA draft. With the Knicks pick, the Nuggets selected, like I said earlier, Jamal Murray. Yeah, that was dumb, but it's the Knicks. Draft day trade. The Knicks gave up Robin Lopez, Jose Calderon, and Jerry Grant for, shout out to Derrick Rose, Justin Holiday, and a 2017 second round pick who actually became Damian Dotson, who's still on the team. He's a pretty good player. I like him. And free agency signings they signed. This is where it went terribly wrong. They signed Ron Baker, which was a cool. Amari Stoudemire, 1-day retirement deal. Maurice Nodur, 2-year contract. Marshall Plumlee, 3 years, $2.5 million. Brandon Jennings, 1 year, $5 million. Courtney Lee, 4 years, $50 million. I feel like he's been serviceable. He's been good. But this is the big one. They signed Joakim Noah to a 4-year, $72 million deal. Wow. And we all know how the season went. Even with Rose, Anthony Porzingis, and Noah, yeah, the season was still bad. They couldn't defend. Just, wow. They didn't make the playoffs. But that last season, 2017-2018 season, they had the 8th pick, and they selected Frank Ntilikina, which a lot of people were mad because they wanted Dennis Smith Jr., but Frank Ntilikina seems like an okay pick, but we'll see with time. Only time will tell with these kids. And during the offseason, they finally let Phil Jackson go, and they brought in Scott Perry from the Sacramento Kings. Unfortunately, they had to give up a second-round pick and cash. But why get a guy who worked for an organization whose last All-Star pick was DeMarcus Cousins? That's neither here nor there, but so far he hasn't done a bad job at drafting. Trades, though, he is okay. So the first thing Scott Perry did, he's traded Carmelo Anthony out for Enes Kanter, and Doug McDermott, which was pretty good. They needed that. And they trade away Willie Hernan-Gomez for 2020-2021 second-round picks. Yay, they actually got picks. But they gave up picks too. In a trade which I still do not understand because they drafted Frank Ntilikina, they traded for Emmanuel Mudiay and gave up Devin Harris, Doug McDermott, a 2018 second-round pick, and first season without Carmelo, and Porzingis only played 48 games. Surprisingly, the Knicks didn't do that bad for all that adversity. Yeah, they only won 29 games, but it's not that far off from when you had Carmelo in the last 3 seasons. And that goes to present day, 2018-2019. Season hasn't started. Doesn't matter, but they drafted Kevin Knox and Mitchell Robinson, who both look decent. And shout out to Scott Perry for those moves. So what hurt the Knicks in the 2000s? One is definitely injuries. I swear, they had to have fired their whole training staff by now, because that's ridiculous how many injuries there were. But also, the other thing is trading their draft picks, and I feel like that's why people don't want to trade their draft picks. You know, people gave so much shit for when Brooklyn traded away a few picks, but the Knicks were way worse. But I feel like it's because it's the mecca of basketball. They're not going to do that to them. But here's a video montage of the guys who the Knicks traded. And thank you for watching, and come back next time so we can run it back. Later, y'all.